Hey, good morning from chilly but sunny Kansas City. Hey, if you're going to the ball game tonight, bundle up. But welcome to SportsBeat Live, the weekly show where we talk Royals. And boy, when I hear that music and see that video, it's time to talk about Kansas City's baseball team. Sam, I think that's probably the first time you've seen the fine craftsmanship of Neil Nakahodo there.
It is. It matches our Chiefs intro. That's awesome.
Yeah, really good job by Neil. Also, so that's the first time we've seen that this year, and today also marks the first time that we get to say hello to our presenting sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. They'll be with us all season long, and great to have KU Med as our sponsor. So, you know the deal. We're talking Royals today with beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnist Sam McDowell. Plenty to get to, and let's also, while we're at it, say hello to. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Juan Payaris says hello from Columbia, and that's Columbia with an O, so it's not Columbia, Missouri, or South Carolina. Um, that is uh, that is Columbia in South America. So, hey, if you got a question for us, Juan, let us know, and we'll talk Royals with you. Okay, guys. 5 games in the books, 4 since the last time we spoke, because we did get to talk after the last Friday after opening day. But we now have 5 games in the books. Would be 6, but the afternoon game on Wednesday against the Cardinals was rained out, weathered out. So we didn't get to see Zach Greinke's second start. We did see his first, and then we saw each of the starting rotation throw a game. And if I had to label it, I would go good, good, bad, bad. And then, Lynn, what do we call the fifth start? Daniel Lynch's start against the Cardinals on Tuesday night.
I guess meh. I mean, I can't say that it was. I mean, you can't call it good. I don't know. I would say that it was a horrible start or a bad start. I mean, really, he was a strike away from getting out of those two big innings unscathed. Instead, that strike turned into home runs. So you end up with two 3-run innings. Still, they ended up coming within a run of being able to tie that thing up. But obviously, giving up 3 home runs, giving up a couple of 3-run innings, did pitch into the or through 5 innings. So he was able to give you a little bit of length there. But again, like I said, you can't call it good. I don't know if you would really say it was a bad start, especially compared to some of the shorter outings we saw just before that. So I'm landing on meh.
Okay, I think that's fair. That and listening to your interview with him after the game, he seemed okay with it. We don't have that audio. We're gonna hear from Salvador Perez a little bit later, and his thoughts on his 2 home runs in the game, but also what he thought of Daniel Lynch. He did make some quality pitches, but I suppose it's still part of adjusting to the major leagues. That when you get 2 strikes on a hitter, you can't you just can't leave one over the plate. And to have the Cardinals not only number 9 hitter but backup catcher who came into that bat with 3 career home runs in 90 major league games, for him to go deep with the 3-run homer, that was just a backbreaker for the Royals after they had worked hard to get the game tied at 3. So you take the good and the bad with a performance like Daniel Lynch's, but on Sunday, I'm gonna downgrade bad to alarming the performance of the pitchers on that day, especially the draft class of the 2018. Sam, I don't know if you were at the ballpark on Sunday, but I know you paid attention to that game. How concerned should the Royals be after the performances of Chris Bubich and Jackson Kowar and Brady Singer?
Well, I think it's probably a different answer for each of those three guys. But as a collective, it's one game, right? I mean, so I think early in the baseball season, it's pretty easy to make a lot of a first outing. On the other hand, the Royals have since sent Kowar to AAA. So now that's a move that Len and I had talked about. I mean, he saw that coming based on bringing other guys up. They had to create a roster spot. But I think if he had pitched really well, that might not have been the move. Brady Singer, this was telegraphed in spring training. I mean, he needs to develop a third pitch if he wants to be a starting pitcher in the major leagues. And he's got a changeup. He doesn't want to throw the changeup. He threw it like 3.5% of the time last year. You've got to have a more consistent third pitch if you want to be a starting pitcher. And I realize they're using him out of the bullpen now, but obviously his goal is to get back in the rotation at some point. With Bubich, I think that's the one I'd be. Obviously you want all your young guys to throw well, particularly when you've got a lot of young guys in your rotation and your bullpen combined. But I'd like to see a few more starts from Bubich before we sound the alarm bells on him.
I also think Bubich had the misfortune of running into a Guardians team that was pretty angry after a lineup that after Royals pitchers handled that lineup in the first 2 games. This was a determined Cleveland team that came out, and those bats didn't cool off on Sunday. They went into Monday afternoon as well and ended up hanging 17-10. Is that what it was in the 2 games against the Royals? They did manage to battle back a little bit on Monday, and but it wasn't enough. I don't know, Lynn. I agree with Sam that especially when it comes to Bubich and Singer, that you got to give him a little bit more time. But Kowar, he has got to figure this out, doesn't he? I mean, he's pitched in 10 major league games, and his ERA over 30 innings. His ERA is over 12. There's just something that happens to him at the major league level where he can't get people out. His fastball seems flat and very hittable. Obviously, I think there's probably, of those 3 pitchers, maybe the most concern for Jackson Kowar.
Well, I think with Kowar, to me, I don't think it's the same thing every time out. So I think like last year, there were times where command was a big issue where, just throwing strikes was an issue at times last year. That outing the other day, he was throwing strikes. He got hit. I think he gave up 11 hits and 3 in the third. So you don't get hit that often if you're not around the strike zone. So then it becomes an issue of whether it's the quality of pitches he's making or it's the sequencing. And so I think it's a different issue than what we saw at times last year, but at the same time, still concerning. I think it might be one of those things where as he goes down to the minors again, it can get cleaned up. I think back to Daniel Lynch last year, and obviously when he initially came up, his first issue was pitch tipping. But one of the things that he's talked about after coming back up last year and again this spring and early this season was he had to sort of rethink about how he evaluated his starts at AAA, because if you just look at numbers, and same thing with Kowar, they can put up numbers that are just dominant easily. They can do that at AAA. But he started talking about how when he went back, he had to reevaluate how his outing was based on the types of pitches he was making, the locations, the quality of pitches, and how would that play against big league hitters, not how does that play against the guys that I'm facing right now. And I think that's where Kowar has to get to. I think that's from, talking to Mike Matheny, I think that was part of what Kowar had said on his way out as he was getting ready to go down to the minor leagues again this year. So we'll see if that makes a difference. But to me, it's been different things, the times that he's, struggled. His first couple of starts, it seemed like jitters and just not being able to put the ball where he wanted to. And then last year, later on, it seemed like maybe some command issues. And we've seen little stretches, even in that outing the other day, I think, 3 1/3, I think is what he ended up throwing. And there was a stretch in there where he went, I think he, I don't remember. I don't think it was 1, 2, 3, but it might have been 3 out of 4 and went through, the meat of their lineup. And so you see it. It's just doing it regularly.
Is there an argument to be made about when we talk specifically about the draft class of 2018 that like everybody else who was picked in the year, they've had a bumpy road to the majors because of the 2020 season. You know, the Royals, of course, put a lot of stock in college pitchers for that draft, and instead of high school players or hitters, the fact that they went heavy at the top on college pitching, and they haven't had the smoothest of paths to the major leagues, and yet they're all they've all pitched in the majors at this point. Is it reasonable to expect some little more, or to expect them to need more time to develop? I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the case, Blair. But I mean, when you mentioned they emphasize college pitchers specifically for that reason, so that the time to get here and be effective here wasn't this long runway. So I think it's fair to wonder what they're going to get out of this draft class at this point. I mean, and that by no means says that these guys aren't going to develop into guys that can contribute at the major league level, but they haven't come at this accelerated pace that is the reason they drafted these guys, was to help them quicker, to accelerate the rebuild so that they didn't have to have this long wait for these guys to have an impact. And here we are. I mean, you mentioned 2018. Here we are 4 years later, and we're still wondering what these guys are going to give them at a major league level.
And look, we've spent a lot of time on these 2018 pitchers, but hats off to Zach Greinke and to Brad Keller, especially Brad Keller. That was quite an outing for him in the second game. Was it six shutout, I think. And he's scheduled to go tonight, right, Lynn? Even though Greinke was supposed to pitch the afternoon game on Wednesday, they're going to stick with the rotation and have Keller go tonight.
I have not. I did not see that. I hadn't seen for sure that was what I thought that they were still going with Greinke, but I had not seen for sure that was going to be the case.
Let me interject. I got that from AP. They're on their major league standings where they list the probables, and they may have just gone with the fact that didn't consider the rain out, and this would have been Keller's normal spot in the rotation. It very well may be Greinke tonight. And you're right. I was looking for some indication in your rainout story, but apparently Matheny didn't make an announcement on the starting pitcher when last time you talked to him.
Not the last that I'd heard it, because I did not get a message back. The last I had heard about if they were just pushing people back a day, that would be the most likely scenario that I would think, just because I think Greinke in particular already has an extra day off because of the off day, because he started the opener and then they had the off day on Friday. And now you're talking about another day where they didn't play because of the rain out. So I'm not sure if you push him back. Plus, I feel like, if anybody's going to get extra days, it might be one of the younger guys. But then again, maybe he's better suited to handle that if they, wanted to do something else with him as far as, side session. So, but I had not known for sure yet. I think the last time yesterday when we heard the timing announcement, I think I had sent a text message and I hadn't heard back from Royals on if it was necessarily Greinke getting pushed back. But also you have I guess Monday, I believe, is another off day. So it's going to be interesting because it seems like everybody's going to have some extra time here as far as the pitching plans go, between the off day, the scheduled off day with the, after the opener, this rain out day, and then another off day coming up in 4 or 5 after this 4-game series. So it'll be interesting to see if they do anything different there with their starters.
Okay. All right. Hey, I want to talk about the lineup and what we've seen from the position guys, but let's transition into that by hearing from Salvador Perez, who had the 2 home runs on Tuesday in St. Louis, his first 2 of the season. And he discusses that and the performance of Daniel Lynch, starting pitcher Daniel Lynch, among other topics, when Lynn talked to him in St. Louis. So let's hear from Salvador Perez.
I feel great, I think the most important thing is win the game. And it's like hit 4 home and lose. Like, you know, like, yeah. For me, I feel good, but for the team, I feel kind of bad. Should we win the game tonight? Hopefully more homes coming, Try to help my team to win. Like, no, I always coming to play hard every day, Get some opportunity, get some at bat, try to do my best, and see what happens after the last out.
Do you feel like it was important for you guys to respond the way you did when they scored 3 for you guys to come right back with it?
Yeah, it was, we're going to try to do that whole season now, We're going to try to, when we get inning like that, they score 3 wrong or 2 wrong or 1 wrong, and coming back and doing the same thing, Try to tie the game or get the lead. Pretty good. I think just 2 pitchers, stay middle up, change again Arenado. I think it was a slider to the catcher, to a striker to be in the dirt or at least down, But I think he's doing a pretty good job. He said the bullpen, go up after the home and go and throw 1 more inning. I think it was a big deal for us. So he's doing a pretty good job now. I think they're trying the best, They like to compete and they start to learn a little more, It's gonna get some time, bro. They got the stuff. They just need concentration, try to make a better pitch. And what I think they're gonna be one of the best starters in the league. They're gonna have a great rotation, So we're getting close. I think there's every day it's a new opportunity, Team to learn and do it. And the next start, learn from tonight and try to get better for the next one.
So that was Salvador Perez, of course, and he loves hitting home runs. He likes winning more. It was fun to hear. And to be honest with you, he didn't swing the bat great at Kauffman Stadium in the Cleveland series. He had a couple of hits, had an RBI. But I think until he hit his first home run, you were thinking, "Oh man, is he going to?" Was last year a little bit of a fluke? Can he approach, the 48 home runs that he hit a year ago? And he had a couple of terrific swings in St. Louis, especially that first home run that traveled. I think 440 it was measured. Lynn, yeah, it looks like he's got a stroke back, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was laughing to myself because you said, up until that point, maybe there was some question. One person who had no question was Andrew Benintendi. We talked to him after Monday's game. I keep thinking that it was Sunday because of an afternoon, but it was Monday's game because that was the day that Salvi broke an 0 for 12 and had his first 2 hits and an RBI. And I think I just said that something along the lines of, I said, "Oh, was it pretty good to see him get going again?" And he said, "We never had any worry about that." He said, "Anybody who thought that, was worried about that, that's just stupid." And so Benny was never worried at all. 0 for 12 didn't mean anything to him. And I think he said he's got, 700 something at bats left. So nobody's worried about that 0 for 12. And then the next day he hits 2 home runs. So, yeah, I mean, it was maybe a little bit of, is this going to be a slow start just because of, seeing how crazy he ended last year, or it seemed he had that stretch where it seemed like he was hitting a home run or a grand slam like every other day. So it maybe warps your perception of it, but 0 for 12 in the larger scheme, as Benny said, stupid to worry about that.
And Benny has been swinging a great bat. This first in the Cleveland series, he was not the only one, really. I guess Nicky Lopez as well, but Benny was off to a terrific start. I'd wonder too, just a little bit, if the shortened spring training had an impact on bats. But looking around the major leagues, I don't think that can be used as an excuse. And then how about Salvador hits his 2 on Wednesday and yesterday, or on Tuesday, right? And then yesterday, Vlad Guerrero hits 3. So the chase is on again between those two, who both ended up with 48 last year. Sam, what was your impression of the lineup? There's one player that sticks out for his for the way he's performed on not such a good way, and that's Carlos Santana. But how about the rest of the lineup, up and down? What are you seeing?
Yeah, I had some questions about just the lineup as a whole going into the season, mostly with the pop. How many home runs could this team hit? And I realized that, heck, when you date back to the World Series team, they didn't get there based on hitting home runs because that's hard to do at Kauffman Stadium. So why build your team around that? But they do have guys in the lineup that's what they're expected to do. You mentioned Santana, and he's not a guy that's done that a lot since he's been here. But I think Whit Merrifield's going to hit at some point. I know there's no track record here at the major leagues, but I still think Bobby Witt's going to hit. It's 5 games into the season, and like I said earlier about the pitching, I know there's a lot of reaction based on 5 games, but they've got guys in their lineup right now that aren't hitting that will hit. That I think are less guys to be less concerned about. But Santana's one that I do wonder what the plan with him, because they've got guys in the minor leagues that might be knocking at the door at some point. And if Santana's slump stretches at the All-Star break, something like that, I wonder what you do at that spot in the lineup.
Yeah, he's picking up where he left off last year. Remember, he got off to a great start for the Royals in the first few months of the season, and then was in a tailspin to end the year, and that's where he is to begin this year. Look, we have to keep saying it's only been 5 games, and but it's just the quality of the at bats are such that you wonder what the Royals could do with him, because he is based on what he's been doing here and what you might project for him, he is clogging up first base for some minor leaguers that Nick Prado in particular that you might want to see at the major league level. And to me, the best case scenario for the Royals would have been for Carlos Santana to start blazing and then become an attractive trade piece at some point that would allow the Royals to bring up a Nick Prado perhaps, or MJ Melendez, or however the Royals wanted to play that. But instead, you've got a $10.5 million player who's not hitting and not getting on base. I guess he has 4 walks this year, but how big a concern should this be if the trend continues, Lynn?
Well, like you guys have both said, it's only 5 games, and so there's definitely the part of me when you look at a 162 that you say 5 games is too early to start doing a whole lot of panicking. But at the same time, in today's world, it's like there's 5 games. We're doing a show today. There are tweets to be fired off and opinions to be sent out into the world. So 5 games is 5 games is what people are working off of. But that said, I think if he has, a solid next series, then a lot of those numbers turn around. And for me, it's not so much going to be home runs, particularly when they're at Kauffman. It's going to be more the on-base number is going to be the thing that I look at, because I think last year, early in the season when he was going well, yeah, he had some home runs, but I think the on-base was the main thing that the way he really stood out. And it was the thing that they had really harped on when they signed him. Makes him also it affects their lineup because he's batting behind, Sal Perez a lot. So that, makes sure that people have to pitch to him, because then if you don't, and you got a guy that you're worried about just sort of adding another man on base or a tough at bat behind him, then it means, Salvi in himself is a hard person to pitch around just because he'll expand and go get stuff. But but the on base is the main thing that I would, really be more concerned about with him. But also we got to keep in mind that, they could easily maybe shave a game off here or there with how much he's in the lineup, because Hunter Dozier can play first base, especially when Salvi's going to be DHing. This last time through, they actually had Santana play first and Dozier went to the bench to start off that game. But you could easily flip it, and then Santana's bat's not in the lineup, whether or not, they want to go that route, depending on the matchup and such. But again, it's early. I think another series, if he gets on base a couple of times, and maybe has a couple of hits or has a clutch hit here or there, I don't think anybody's worried about it. But again, 5 games is what people got to work off of, so they're going to work off of it.
With Santana, though, so there is 5 games this year. When you look at his numbers as a whole over just the last 3 years, and obviously 2020 was a shortened season as well. But he hit 199 that year. He hit Len, if you remember right, it was in the teens, 215, something like that last year. Now he started out 1 of 16 this year, and so at some point that becomes a larger trend from season to season, not just these 5 games within this year. And I think we all wondered what they were going to get out of Santana going into this year. And that's why I mentioned that I think Bobby Witt and Whit Merrifield are guys to be less concerned about. Because even if Bobby Witt doesn't have the track record, I just think he's too good not to eventually figure it out. And I think that Whit Merrifield does have the track record and the recency of that he's going to hit. But Santana's always, to me, been the guy I looked at in that lineup and been concerned that what do you do with him if he doesn't? If he doesn't get on base, I mean, that's supposed to be a strength. If he doesn't hit the ball out of the ballpark, that's also supposed to be a secondary strength of his. Then what?
Well, and I think I don't have it in front of me, but that 2020 season with the batting average low, I think he still had a pretty decent on base. So that's why, again, I say the on base is the thing. Last year, early in the season, that number was pretty. He was doing pretty well with that as well. And now the thing that I wasn't really sure how the gauge was. He had, basically played the last month plus, maybe 2 months on one leg because he had a leg injury that really hampered him. And so it just affected his swing. But the thing is he's 35 now. And I'm not sure if it's one of those things you chalk up to, well, it was just a one season. Like if he's 25, you say, well, that was just a one season thing. It was a leg injury that really, you got to discount what happened. But at 35, you got to raise the question. Like, okay, well, is that going to be a thing that's more of a regular thing now because he's getting older and you're going to have those sorts of things that he has to deal with, and especially if he's going to play every day. So that last year, I'm still not entirely sure how the gauge, because we saw that first part of the season and then the last part of the season was the injury. But at that age, I don't know if the injury is going to be more the exception or the rule because he's just getting up there. And if you're going to run him out there every day, then that's what you're going to have to deal with.
It's funny, on my confidence meter, I feel good about Alberto Mondesi getting it together. Bobby Witt Jr. I think we're going to see him hit. It was great to see a home run from Michael A. Taylor, and you already accept that you're going to get. He's there for the defense, and what you get from him, in the batter's box is a bit of a bonus. Benintendi, as we've said, off to a terrific start. But when it comes to Santana, I just don't have the confidence that he's ever going to be, 75% of what he was at his best when he was with Cleveland previously. So I think the Royals will end up. They're going to be forced into a decision with Carlos Santana at some point, and maybe sooner than later with him. Okay, but let's go out on this to see if you guys have any thoughts on the unwritten rules of baseball, which became a story this week in a Giants-Padres game when the Giants got up big on San Diego, and then with the big lead, bunted. And what was the other offense? Unwritten rule offense. Did they steal a base?
I think it was a stolen base.
Yeah, and one was that they were up 10-2 or 10-1 at one point, and maybe 13-2 at the other. And this happened in the 7th inning or later. No sport embraces its unwritten rules more than baseball. And Giants manager Gabe Kapler he was roasted a little bit for this, but his defense, I thought, was reasonable. He wanted to get into the Padres bullpen. He wanted to win the series. He wasn't thinking about that game necessarily in being unsportsmanlike. He was thinking about the series as a whole. Look, it's not a story that's spread like wildfire or anything, but I think for baseball fans, it was a pretty interesting response from the Giants when asked about this. And we've all watched baseball all of our lives, and we understand what these unwritten rules are. Is this going to be the start of something, Lynn, or a little brush fire early in the season that'll extinguish quickly?
My guess is it's probably more the brush fire than the big start of some big change. At the same time, I mean, I guess just personally, I always fall on, and I guess I've been told it's more, or I guess people say it's more of an old school thing, but I always remind people I'm actually getting younger. But aside from that, the old school thing is just like, I mean, I have no problem, like, if somebody's like bat flip, or they're gonna, whatever unwritten rule, name it, bunt for the hit or steal the base late. To me, that's not a problem. But I also say it's not a problem if the team that that has that done to them decides to take umbrage and gives you a little chin music, or gives you, one on the hip or something like that. It's, to me, the inconsistency is, you say, well, they should be able to express themselves and they should be able to do this, that, and the other, and you just have to deal with it. If you don't like it, then stop them. It's like, okay, but to me, it's consistent to also say, well, then if they don't like it and they let you know about it in a way that is expressive, maybe it's, an expressive way that, includes a ball buzzing by the, your chin, then you should say that, that's fair game too. So that's just me, but I don't think it's going to be that big a big start or something different, but we'll see.
I do think baseball is at a little bit of a crossroads with these unwritten rules, because they're a sport that needs to have more electricity in their game right now. And so if that means guys showing their emotion, I think that's a good thing. I don't understand why you would want to zap the emotion out of your game when you're trying to get more viewers. I do think there's a difference between taunting the opposition and celebrating your own achievements. And that when that line's crossed, I think that's different. Related to the Giants-Padres issues, I've always thought that stuff was completely bogus. I mean, Gabe Kapler's best response a day later was, why should one team continue to play 100% and the other team should basically only play at half measure? Why are they, are the Giants allowed to suddenly put their third baseman on the infield grass and you can't take advantage of it and bunt? Because that's the way you're taught to play the game. And suddenly you have to have an off switch mid-game. I've never understood that part of the unwritten rules. You always play like you're trying to win the at-bat, win the pitch, and that shouldn't change just because you're up by 8 or 9 runs in the 6th inning.
And one thing also, I think, I don't think I've heard it associated with that. Like Kapler talked about, trying to do the best that you can to win that series. I think especially against division teams, this could be something that maybe has an impact throughout the season, because this year, like in theory, if you're forcing them to use more pitchers to get deeper into their bullpen and waste more arms, this is the first year where you're going to actually have a limit on how many times you can option guys. So like teams like Tampa Bay used to always do this, where they'd have a guy up for a short period of time, option him out, and then just bring up another guy. So I think maybe, especially against, division teams, if you can beat up their bullpen and make them use more pitchers, and then know that there's going to be a limit on how many guys they can bring up or risk having to lose guys, then maybe that, over the course of the season has an impact. But I mean, I guess that's probably going too far into the weeds with that. But that was one thing I think I thought, as far as just the, strategically, especially when you're playing division teams, you're going to see over and over again.
I can remember back in the day that Greg Gagne for the Royals bunted to break up a no-hitter. I think it was in Oakland, like in the 8th or 9th inning. And boy, that was what blowback the Royals and Greg Gagne got for that, for breaking that unwritten rule, breaking up a no-hitter with a bunt. But one of our unwritten rules is to be out of here after about 30 minutes or so, and we have violated that. But the conversation was so good with Lynn Worthy and Sam McDowell, I think you'll forgive us. So we'll bid farewell for this week, and want to thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. And I want to remind you guys that we'll be back on a regular basis starting Tuesday next week. So, yeah, we've only got a 5-game sample size so far this year. It's going to be shorter when we talk to you again, the time between shows. So we'll tune in Tuesday, 10 a.m., and we will talk Royals baseball with you then. Take care, guys.